Hey everyone, this is Sonali Mangal, and this is my very first podcast titled Learn, Educate, Discover. In fact, today is the very first episode of the podcast. Yes, woohoo! I am super excited, and I really hope that this podcast turns out to be a useful resource for all our listeners. Now, before I get into what this podcast is all about, let me briefly describe why I even started this podcast. So I was actually job hunting some time back. Yes, I was job hunting. You know, that really fun and absolutely stress-free exercise that anyone can undertake, right? No, of course not. I am a normal human being, and therefore it wasn't fun at all. It was actually very stressful, not stress-free. And the reason it wasn't fun is because I wasn't very clear what I wanted to do next. Yes, I wasn't. And when I discussed this with a few of my friends and family members, that's when I realized that I am actually not alone in this dilemma. It's actually very interesting because if you take a look at the world today, on the one hand, there are a lot of very interesting things that people can do to make a living. I mean, there are people who are doing things like fortune cookie writing and making all kinds of crazy YouTube videos and traveling around the world and eating exotic food on TV. So really a lot of very fun and interesting stuff that you can do to make a living. But despite all of these options, you still have so many people today who aren't happy at work. And the reason they're not happy at work is because they simply don't enjoy what they do so much. So I think that part of the problem, maybe not the full extent of it, but I think part of the problem is that I think for many of us, we simply aren't aware of all the options that are out there. I mean, your perfect job could be something that you didn't even know exists. And if you don't know that there's this great thing that exists, then how would you even work towards it? So I think there's a little bit of an information gap that exists in terms of simply knowing what all is out there. And even if you do know that there's this really great job that is an option, you still might not understand it fully. And what I mean by that is you might not really understand what does someone in that job actually do on a day-to-day basis. What kind of problems do they solve? What kind of people do they work with? Do they have a healthy work-life balance or not? And I think these questions are very critical for someone to really be able to say, hey, I think this sounds interesting and I would like to explore it further. So that's the idea behind the podcast. And the show format is actually very simple. What we'll do is on every episode, we'll invite someone new from a different profession, and we'll simply have a nice and long conversation with them. If they're in our studio, hopefully that conversation will be over a glass of wine. If not, I guess we'll have to let go of the wine. But either way, the goal would be to try and get as many details as we can about the job. And hopefully then someone who's listening to the show can then figure out for themselves, does that job sound interesting to them or not? So, with that introduction, I'm going to now introduce our very first guest on this show. His name is Vishal Srivastav, and he works as a product marketing manager with Microsoft. So, product marketing manager is actually a fairly popular position with a lot of companies across industries such as technology and retail and hospitality. Pretty much any company that has marketing will have something around product marketing. And I'm sure all of you are familiar with Microsoft. They are the creators of Windows operating system and are headquartered in Redmond, which is close to Seattle. And that's where Vishal works. So I'm going to now switch over to Vishal and let him do all the talking. Hey Vishal, how are you? Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, thank you so much for your time. So did you just come back from work? It's like 9 p.m. right now.
I came back a little bit early, then I was taking care of a few errands, and I just got back home.
Okay, cool. So actually Vishal and I go back fairly long ago. We were colleagues, we were working together. And I remember this very funny time when Vishal, I think you used to sit in the cube next to me. And I remember this very funny time. Yeah, when I was sitting in my cube and I could hear someone laughing and trying really hard that no one heard them. But there was like this laughter that would come in every few minutes. And then I walked into your cube and I saw that you were pretending to work, but you were watching some like weird sitcom on your laptop. Isn't that correct?
Well, it was the Daily Show, I think.
Yeah. So that was funny. Yeah. So anyway, so as you heard, we're going to try and tease out as many details as we can about what you do as a product marketing manager. But before we get into that, maybe you could start out with telling us a little bit about yourself, just so that the listeners know whom they're listening to.
Sure. So I can take this many different ways, but in interest of time, what I'll do is I'll keep it in the professional context for now, and also try to keep it brief. And if you find anything interesting that you want to get into, we can get into that. So let's do this in a chronological order. I am an engineer by training. I did my engineering from Delhi University, passed out in about 2006, and after that I started at Microsoft India in a product group. I was an engineer there for a few years, enjoyed my role. I always wanted to work on kind of hard problems, and the engineering role allowed me to do that, so I really liked it. And after a few years, I decided I wanted to switch and do something different, and I still was in love with technology, so I wanted to stay in technology. But I just wanted to move from, just the how part of the business of how do we develop a product to, what do we develop. So I moved into a program management role, which is where Sonali and we worked together in a different product group. I worked on the Office product for about 1.5 years as a PM, I think, program manager, or as it is called at Microsoft. Mm-hmm. Very fun experience. I don't think I've learned at a higher rate at that time in my life before that. So learned a bunch of new things, got a very good flavor of what being a product manager means. And after that, at that time I decided that I wanted to study business. I wanted to come to business school, kind of fill the business and management sort of skill set as well. So I came to business school, but right before that, I did a very small stint at a startup in a product role. Was something I wanted to really do it before I came to business school, just to know what it is like. At business school, my focus was again, I think it was a little bit all over the place. One area of focus for me was venture capital. So I was part of a student-run VC fund. I also did a couple of stints at a couple of local VC firms, just to see what it is like. It was fun while I did it, but I realized I did not want to do that kind of full-time. So, and I didn't want to go away, get further away from technology. So I came back to the technology industry, came back to Microsoft, but this time in a role of a product marketing manager after business school. So long story short, I've been in this role for a little over a year now, and I am happy to talk about it. It's been a pretty fun ride.
Tell us a little bit about your decision to join Microsoft as a product marketing manager after business school.
Absolutely. So the way I would put it is that I have always liked to build things. So I think in some way or fashion, it's always about building something. And when you're building products, I think it's very important to kind of get all the different sides of the equation. You cannot just sit in your own world and build products. You need engineering, you need operations, you need marketing, you need design, and all of those things. So I think what I'm doing is kind of just consciously or unconsciously just getting all these different experiences where you have the product at the center, and you're getting different perspectives to of all the different functions that it takes to really build great product. So far I've done engineering, I've done product management, so to say, and now it's marketing. So I don't know what's next, but I think it'll come around full circle.
Okay.
Go back to a product role.
Yeah. So of course, I'm going to ask you, what does a product marketing manager do? But before we get into that, is this a role that is specific to technology companies, or is it found across other industries also?
Not at all. I think this role is found in many industries. I think any industry in which you build products, whether it's retail, whether it's luxury goods, or cosmetics, whatever it is.
I see. Okay.
Whenever there's a product, there's going to be product marketing.
Right. Okay. Yeah. So then I think this is the meat of the podcast, which is what does a product marketing manager do?
Yeah. So Sonali, I know we have talked. I know that is how we started talking about this, and I've thought about this a lot. Like, how should I describe what a product marketing manager do? And unfortunately, I haven't come to a single definition. I have seen many flavors of product marketing just at Microsoft, because there's so many different kinds of products. But let me try to take a stab at what at an over level, at a very high level, what I have found, what it means. I think at a very high level, it's you're at the end. So at the very highest level, it's a marketing role. So when you are marketing, it's not only there's so many things. There's inbound, outbound. At the end of the day, you are.
Can you actually? Sorry, I didn't want to interrupt you, but can you describe what inbound and outbound means?
Sure, absolutely. So marketing is about, part of it is educating the customer or your target segment, and part of it is attracting your target segment to become sort of leads, right? So you're trying to generate leads, you're trying to generate contacts of people who may be interested in what you're selling, right? So when you are looking at traffic coming in, or your potential customers / leads coming in, then you are looking at inbound. And when you are doing the first part of what I said, which is educating or advertising, whatever you want to call it, then that's more of an outbound activity.
I see.
Anyway, so yeah, going back to what I was saying, if we think about marketing, product marketing is a subset of marketing where you focus on the product instead of focusing on the segment or the target or your campaigns or of all the things that come together to be called as marketing. You focus on the product and you think about what's the best way in which I can position this product in the market. You develop a value proposition around it, you choose the right kind of target segment, and then you make sure that you message it the best way so that it lands it in the best fashion in your target segment. Not only you do that, you not only prepare the value proposition, you also think about how do you prove that. You can say anything, but you have to prove it as well to your target customer as well. So I think at a very high and broad level, if you want to see product marketing across the board, I think that's what it is. It's more product centric. You focus on the product and think how to best land it in the market, especially with respect to all the different competitive products that are out there. What's your core value proposition? What's your core points of differentiation? And that's kind of your go-to-market strategy, so to say.
So this might be, maybe this is a hard question to answer off the bat, but if you were to, at a very high level, try and structure the different roles that exist within marketing, and then say, this is where product marketing sits. Could you do that?
Sure. So I can try to take a stab at it from the Microsoft perspective because that's what I know best.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and then we can extend it by extrapolation to technology industry, I guess, or at least the software industry.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so I think we started from kind of inbound and outbound, right? So product marketing is more of an inbound function where you are kind of listening to all the signals from outside, and you're deciding what's the value proposition, what's your messaging, and building these kind of materials, these marketing materials, which are the best way in which you can tell your story to the customer, right? So on the outbound side, you have a lot of roles on the outbound side, which are a lot of marketing is done through campaign, which is kind of the vehicle through which marketing engines run. So there are a lot of roles around communications, around brand advertising, around campaign management. So there's a lot of roles like this which can be bundled up into something which you can call it like marketing communications. All outbound roles, it even includes things like digital marketing, where you are using your digital assets to tell your story, amplify your message on the digital channels. So that's on the outbound side. We talked a little bit on the inbound side for product marketing managers. There's also roles which focus on monetization. At Microsoft, these roles are called business planning, but these roles squarely focus on, all right, we have a piece of technology, we have a product, what's the best way to monetize it? So what should be the pricing around it? What should be the licensing model, the business model around it? What are the kind of promotions that we can run so that we can undercut the competition or be more aggressive, or take into account seasonality, all of that. So it's a very analytical role. It's much more strategic. At Microsoft, it's called business planning, as I said, but think of it as a monetization or a pricing kind of a role.
Mm-hmm.
So I think these are the broad buckets. There are a lot of fringe roles here and there, which are more niche for particularly for Microsoft or for this particular industry. If you want, we can get into that. But I think this is how I think about it, broadly speaking.
Okay. So that was very helpful, Vishal, in terms of you giving us an idea of the buckets that one can expect in marketing overall. So coming back to your role, which is product marketing, just to give a little bit more flavor, could you maybe talk about a project that you may have worked on over the last 1 year, which could be fairly descriptive of the kind of things that you do in this job?
Sure, I can talk about the project that's kind of most recent. So, as I said, product marketing is more of an inbound role, and sometimes a lot of what you do is not, does not fit in what's considered marketing in its traditional form. So I worked on a project for measuring the active usage on the product. So let me give you some background on the product I'm working. I'm working on a SaaS application. It's a business application called CRM Online.
Sorry. When you say SaaS, what does that mean?
Oh, software as a service. So if you've heard of Salesforce.com, the company, so what CRM Online is a competitor of Salesforce.com.
I see. Okay.
So right now at Microsoft, we are going through a change of business model. We are going from box software to cloud software and cloud platforms. So as a result of that, we are changing a lot of internal as well as external processes where we drive our workflows and actions from earlier we would focus on selling stuff. Now we focus more on consumption of our platform, right? So we want to align our sales channels to not only selling but also consumption of the service. And the reason consumption and usage is important is because if there is no usage, then customers do not have a reason to renew their subscription, which is software as a subscription model. So I worked on developing a metric for the business, which is you can think of it as the monthly active usage or daily active usage metric for the entire business, and then rolling it out for all of our sales channels, so our own field, our own sales teams. We also sell through partners, so to all of our partners, and a bunch of other sort of internal users as well who will start depending on this metric to see how well they are performing.
Okay. And how long was this project for? How long does it take you to do something like this?
Yeah, so that's a good question. So we took about maybe 6 months to come up with the right definition, apply the right kind of business rules, and bring the business to a place where the metric is agreeable to all the stakeholders, both internal as well as external to Microsoft.
I see.
So about 6 months of that development rolling out, and after that, I think it becomes more of a ongoing activity to keep updating it and enhancing it.
I see. And so when you're working on something like this, are you working alone or are you working in a team?
Yeah, I think working alone is a myth. That has never happened. No, it's you're always working with a team, but that team is not your own team in the sense that the people you work with, they do not report to you. Most of the people I've worked with are very senior folks who are experts in their own domains or functions. So I work a lot with very senior folks from across the company, so not only from sales teams, but also support teams, engineering, service engineering, operations, all the possible teams and functions you can think of. You work with their sort of senior people because they are the right stakeholders who influence, do the work, and help you make the right decision. So
I see.
I would say you are 100% of the time collaborating with a lot of different stakeholders. Yeah.
Okay. No, that definitely helps because it's a fairly cross-functional role then.
Definitely.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. So, can you describe a typical day for us? What kind of activities do you usually end up spending your time in?
Yeah, so I would say, so to make progress, you are constantly making decisions. And as somebody in my role, you are always driving these decisions. So you're collecting inputs from all the different stakeholders, kind of creating, you're adding your own inputs to it as well, because you are the one who's driving it. And you are pushing those decisions forward, and so that the project moves on to the next stage. Right? So I think a lot of it is communication, driving meetings, and creating a work product that you can use to communicate your vision and your plan in a cogent way to senior folks as well as executives, so that you are getting the right kind of people in the room at the right time, and making those decisions in the right way. So I would say a lot of meetings, a lot of communications, a lot of brainstorming, lots of brainstorming with all these stakeholders. There's a little bit of status reporting as well, although I personally try to outsource it as much as I can, because I want to focus more on getting the work done. And other than that, I think you're also trying to educate yourself because it's such a big company. There are so many different things that are going on, and a lot of things impact the work that you're trying to do in unexpected ways, and you don't know that. So you kind of have to keep your eyes and ears open and build relationships with with at least a few people in the team who will always, if you go and talk to them about your work, they also kind of become your eyes and ears, and they'll put you in touch with other people for whom it would be good for me to talk to. So I don't know how much of it was day to day, but I think I covered most of the things or at least activities I end up spending most of my energies and time on.
Okay. Yeah. So if you were to think of your time as a pie, right? And I'm sure your estimates would be approximate, but just for the benefit of our listeners, if you were to take a guess, how much time, like how much percentage of that pie would go towards simply keeping everyone up to date, what you call status reporting, and then how much percentage is just working alone, building out some kind of material or doing some research, however you want to structure it?
Yeah. So let's think about it. So if I think about working alone and doing the research, I think that's maybe about, I would say 20%. I would say about 60% of it is just collaboration with others. So setting up meetings, building relationships, and kind of setting up your network in the right way so that there's a free flow of information, and you're not getting blindsided about some core thing that you may have missed out. So setting up that network and collaborating in a free fashion, I think that's very important. So that's more than half of your time gets spent there. And then the rest of the 20% is just, I think, things like status reporting, things that you don't maybe are the most thrilled about on a day-to-day basis.
Right.
Responding to escalations or doing fire drills sometimes because of emergency executive action that somebody needs an update, or something happens, some kind of fire drill. They're called fire drills because they happen because randomly and for no reason. So.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, super helpful. So, what are your working hours like? When do you usually get into office? When do you usually leave? And then maybe you could also give an example of, on a typical day, this is what it looks like. And maybe when you have one of these fire drills, as you called it, when you have one of these going on, then how does that impact your working time?
Yeah, so I think a typical day, I would say, would be about 8 to 9 hours. On a typical day, people, depending on your team, you can either start early or late, however you want to come, however you want it. So I think a typical day, so that's like the median length of the day. Majority of your days would be between 8 to 9 hours. But whenever there's a fire drill, then you can even be working for like 12 hours or 14 hours. But those are very infrequent and special cases.
I see. And do you also bring work back home?
I think that's a personal choice. I think a lot of people I see, they do. I personally, it doesn't work for me at a personal level. So if it means to stay longer at work and finish it, I would rather do that than bring it back home. So I as a rule, never bring any work back home.
Okay. And you've never felt the need to be working from home either?
So if for a personal reason, if I have to stay at home, then I can work from home. I have that flexibility. But I don't think has to work when I'm at home. Microsoft is very good in the sense that it'll respect the boundaries that you set. You can give your 150%, it'll accept it. You can give your 100%, it'll accept that. You can give less than 100%, it'll still accept that too.
Okay. And is your experience, so a lot of the stuff that you described so far in terms of what a product marketing manager does, is that fairly uniform across most companies irrespective of the size? Or is it, or it might vary depending on how big or small a company is?
Yeah, I think it depends on how big of a business do you work on. Even within Microsoft, there are businesses which are very big, like Office, and then there are businesses which are very small, like the one that I work on, as compared to Office. So
when you say Office, you mean Microsoft Office?
That's correct.
Okay.
Microsoft Office, yeah. So if you're working on a big business, then you're definitely much more specialized. It's much more well defined what you do, and it's a very small piece of the pie. If you're in a smaller business or in a much more sort of nimble and high growth business, then it's less well defined what exactly your duties are. You're basically doing a lot of different things, and a lot of it changes over time. So any of the projects that I have done they've all been they're very, very different. None of them had anything to do with any of the other projects that I've done. So you do one project and then you'll never do another project which is anything like the one you did before.
Okay.
So
okay.
So yeah, I think that's how I would think about it.
Okay. And what is the typical career path for someone in this role?
So I think the answer is different for different people, depending on the aspiration. Some people want to deepen their expertise in one function and grow vertically. A lot of people do that. So they'll go from product marketing managers to directors to general managers to vice presidents of marketing. And then there are people who want to, grow horizontally. So they can go from product marketing to kind of marketing communications or even engineering or something like that. And anything that they want to do so that they are, basically covering all the different kind of functions.
I see.
As well.
I see.
Yeah.
So maybe then a better question would be that having spent some time in this role, what are the key things that you learn which you can then apply in different areas?
Yeah, I think the most important thing I would say is, I've got very good opportunities here to understand what it means to run a SaaS business, software as a service. So it's a very specialized kind of business. There are a lot of companies out there which follow this business model, and to be able to start from a small place, and then we have been growing the business. We have basically been doubling our install base every year, every fiscal year since the year I started. So how do you start small and grow your business to double its size every year, so exponentially? So what are the different areas you need to think about in order to grow your business at that rate? Because it's really all your cylinders need to be firing. You cannot, the weakest link in the chain will basically ruin your chances at achieving that growth. So I would say thinking about the business very broadly and at the level of not just I'm thinking about the product or thinking about marketing it, but also thinking about the business as a whole. I think that's been very unique and special, and I truly appreciate that experience that I've got.
Okay.
I think other than that, that's the strategic part. There's a lot more tactical things around how to execute my function. So how do you best tell a story? How do you message and prove your value proposition using, there are so many different ways. There's demonstrations, there are conferences, there are evangelism events where you go and speak to an audience. So how do you do all those things? I think you learn a lot just by doing all those different activities on an ongoing basis. So I'd say both at a strategic level and then a lot of tactical things that I've learned in the last year.
Okay. Yeah, sounds very, very interesting. So I'm going to switch gears a little bit into asking you questions more around your opinion of the role. Because I think we have a fairly good idea now about what the role itself is all about. So what do you enjoy the most about working as a product marketing manager? And it'll be helpful if you can give us an answer from the point of view of, if someone was asking you, what are the most interesting aspects of this role? What would you say?
I think the most interesting, more than interesting, I would say meaningful part of doing this is the impact that you can create. And by impact, I mean the leverage that you have. I'm a single person who's just got out of business school, and the work that I'm doing basically touches upon every single person whose livelihood in some way or fashion depends on this business. So these are, a few thousand people at Microsoft, and then thousands and thousands of partners who depend on Microsoft, who develop solutions and sell solutions on Microsoft platforms, right? So the work that I'm doing basically touches everybody, and it also impacts how our entire customer base, which is like hundreds and thousands of people, of users, how all of them kind of consume the service, and in some ways affects the behaviors that our users show to the service. So one person just out of business school, working with so many different teams to deliver on a project which touches upon every single person in a very, very meaningful way. It's not in a very small way. It's really like it impacts people's livelihood on a day-to-day basis of everybody who's involved in this business. So there's a tremendous amount of leverage that you get with this role, which lets you deliver impact, and that's what you want to see at the end of the day.
Okay, yeah. And are there any aspects of the job that are particularly challenging, and actually it's not the same question, so things that are particularly challenging and things that you do not like as much about the job?
Yeah, so I look at it from a slightly different lens. So challenging and something that you do not like, I wouldn't put them in the same bucket. There are sometimes things that I do not like which are not, sometimes there are things which are not challenging, which I don't feel it's worth my time doing those. But then there are challenging areas as well, which are not very easy to do. I can talk about those because I think those are more sort of meaningful to get across. So whenever you are in a big company, you kind of have to work with a lot of different personalities, a lot of entrenched interests in different parts of the business. And just to get everybody to, I think your aim is not to get everybody to agree, but at least have consensus so that you can push through changes. So I think just doing this kind of change management exercise, which touches upon so many different, individual interests within the business. I think that's the biggest challenge. It's not very fun when you start, but as you start figuring out who are the different players who are involved, what are the different kind of levers that you can pull internally to drive this change within the business, as you start to figure this out, it definitely gets easier and a lot more fun. So I think driving change and just doing this change management exercise and making sure that there's adoption for the change that you're driving, I think that's the most challenging, same time interesting part.
I see.
There's a lot of learning there.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, if you were to think about, let's say, 3 or 4 qualities that you think a person should have to really enjoy this job, or what kind of person do you think would really have fun doing this role?
Sure. So I think one thing is you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. There's just no way around it. Nobody's going to come here and tell you, this is your job and this is how you do it. That will basically never happen. You'll get a ambiguous problem statement which is not even very well defined. Nobody knows how to fix it or how to do it. You will figure out, by working with other people, coming up with using your own creativity, coming up with your own ideas. So first of all, you have to be comfortable with ambiguity. There's just no other way around it. The second is, if you do not like, you have to like working with all sorts of different people, of different personalities, who have different ways of working. If you have to be like very, very collaborative and very, very cross-functional. I think that's number 2. I think number 3, I would say, would be leadership. Like you're not a small part. You're not like a small cog in the machine. You are. The company is hiring you because they see you as a leader who can, make different people come together and make changes to the business. So number 3 is, I think you definitely should see yourself as a leader. You don't have to be somebody who has a very long track record of being a leader, but at the same time you should not be the person who does not see themselves as ever becoming a leader. So I think leadership is very important in this. A lot of your success would depend on how well, what kind of leadership you display, even at a very sort of entry-level role. You have to take ownership. You have to, use your leadership at every stage of the game and drive change, as I said.
Okay, yeah. So to recap, basically, you said they have to be comfortable with ambiguity. They should be fairly okay with working with a lot of different kinds of people from different backgrounds. So cross-functional capability, and then lastly, leadership. Okay, yeah, that's super helpful. I'm going to now switch a little bit to asking you questions from the point of view of someone who might be interested in exploring this role further. So, what is the typical background for a product marketing manager?
So that's interesting because there's no typical background for a product marketing manager. I think anybody who's smart, who understands what the role, who has the right kind of expectations and is interested in doing it, would be a good fit, and generally interested in technology as an industry as well. The reason I say that is because besides me, every single person I know from business school who came to Microsoft, and there are maybe 50 of these people, I would say 95% of the people have nothing to do with either technology or marketing. We have people who are in government or not-for-profits or auto industry or hospitality, all over the place. Nobody from technology, nobody from marketing. I think they are just looking for people who are interested in doing this, who have the right set of ingredients, and a willingness to learn.
Mm-hmm. And when you say
leaders,
sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off. Go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was just saying, be curious to learn new things, and be leaders in an organization. That's all.
Right. And so when you say the right ingredients, are you referring to those three qualities you mentioned someone should have to really thrive in this role?
Right. So I think even if you don't have a demonstrated sort of track record of showing this qualities, just because you are in an environment where you didn't need it, at least you should be open to it and willing to learn that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay. And is there so as you said, there is no one typical background. There are people from all kinds of backgrounds who are now doing very well as product marketing managers. Is there, if not an industry specific background, is there an educational background?
Not at all. I think, I see people who are PhDs, and we don't have any neurosurgeons here, but there are people from all sorts of different backgrounds for sure. Yeah.
I see. Okay, very interesting. So, are there any resources that a potential job applicant can use?
That's a good question. I think from a very tactical standpoint, I think those job interview sites like Glassdoor and stuff, they give you a good sense of what an interview may look like.
Mm-hmm.
But that's very technical. But if you're starting, if you're just starting, you need to be sort of more strategic with your approach. So I think just learning the basics of marketing, just very, very the core tenets of what marketing is, what segmentation, targeting, positioning is, what the 4 Ps are. I think that's available. You can find a ton of articles or take any introductory marketing 101 course online or something like that, so that at least you have the fundamentals right, and then you can always fit your view of the world in those with those fundamentals in place as well.
I see.
The only other thing I would say is I think it's, if you are trying to target a specific company, know that market space. So understand what are the different players there, what are the rules of this game. So for example, the business that I work on, CRM Online, it's a enterprise business apps solution, which is it's basically a SaaS business. So know what a SaaS business is. At least it's important to know. You don't need to be a domain expert there, but at least knowing what is going on in that space, what are the different business models that are followed. I think those help facilitate smart conversations during the interview, which is kind of what you would expect when you come here to work. You regularly talk about those topics at work, and that's how you make progress.
I see.
And decisions on a day-to-day basis.
I see. So what is the best way to apply? So let's say I'm a job applicant and based on what you've described, I find the role interesting.
Yeah.
So how should I go about the job application process?
The best way to apply is to network. So you should really find somebody from your own network, or you can just cold call on LinkedIn. Find somebody who's in that role that you want, or something which is as close as you can find, and ask them about their job. Tell them about your sort of aspiration, and wait until you hit a point when somebody offers to refer you internally, because there's a drastic amount of difference in the same resume when it comes through an online or like any kind of cold application, or if it comes through a referral from an internal candidate. So
right.
Go the extra mile, do the networking, get an internal referral, and that's really the best shot you have at the job. Don't submit your resume online and wait for the response, because chances are that it's just going to get lost in the thousands of submissions that are made online. Recruiters just never. It's kind of like at the bottom of the stack. They'll start at the top of the stack, and at the top of the stack you have the candidates who come through internal referrals. So they might never even get your resume if it's through online channels.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay.
The other way I have heard about it is people use. I have never used it, so I'm not saying it through experience, but I've heard people use consultants. So there are headhunting consultants out there. Some of my friends have had success with it, so I cannot say it's from my own experience, but they've had some success with it as well.
I see.
Still better than applying online.
Right. Okay, so we're towards the end of the interview. Any parting advice that you would like to share with someone who is considering product marketing management as a potential career path?
I think the only advice I would give is just to talk to as many people as you can, to know kind of what they do day to day, and how do they measure success for themselves. What does it mean to be successful in those roles, and try to fit that with what you want to do. And before you go and convince an employer that this is a good fit, I think it's more important to be convinced yourself that it's a good fit, what the company has to offer to you and what you have to offer to the job. So yeah, I think the more you know, the better, and as long as it aligns with your passions or your curiosity about some skills that you want to learn, and you're getting those, I think you'd be in good shape. And the good thing about the tech industry is nothing is kind of constant. Even if you get in and you figure out, hey, maybe this was a good experience, but not something I want to do for 10 years or 20 years, you can always switch around. So don't wait for like 6 months to complete your research at the same time. There's value in just getting in the job and doing it for 6 months and then switching to something else as well. So that take that opportunity cost and into the equation.
Okay. All right. Great. Thanks a lot, Vishal. This was extremely useful. I think I also learned a lot about what a product marketing manager does.
Thanks a lot. This was fun for me as well. Always happy to talk about this stuff. And if anybody has any questions, I'm sure we can get them answered in the comment section.
Yep. All right. Take care. Thanks a lot. Bye, Vishal.
All right. Goodbye.
So that was Vishal Srivastav, guys. I really hope that you enjoyed the episode and found it useful. On the next episode, we have a software engineer from Google who will be sharing a lot of very interesting insights with us. So stay tuned in and have a good one. Take care. Bye-bye.